Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm a book nerd.
I'm Travis, and I'm a video game nerd.
And we like to share our nerd nonsense with one another.
This week, we're talking about Clair Obscur, Expedition 33 by Sandfall Interactive. This is Books and Video Games. Let's get into it. How do you like this manner of storytelling versus, better or worse than, reading a book?
Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. I like books better. I'm a fairly quick reader, so I can get information fairly quickly. Playing 40 hours to get a single plot line feels excessive to me because, I don't know. And it was fun. I don't mean to say that it's not fun, but I definitely do think that if there was a Clair Obscur book and there was a Clair Obscur video game, I'd be like, the book is so much better. I got through it quicker. I got probably more information even than it gave me in the video game, and did so in less time.
I think that's really interesting. So for some context here, the way that I got Elizabeth to play this game, because I had just played it, it was earlier this year, is I told her, Elizabeth, if this was a book, I would say you absolutely have no choice. You have to read it. The story alone is just that good. I could see that possibly a book could be really good. Personally, and this is where we differ, right? She's the books, I'm the video games. I like walking through it. I like living the life of those characters in a way where you get to make some of those decisions. And granted, in terms of decisions you make in Clair Obscur, there's actually not very many, realistically. There is one pretty pivotal one that we'll address later. But for the most part, it's technically somewhat linear, except that you get to explore. One of the things I like about video games as a manner of storytelling is a book is fully linear. Mm-hmm. There is no deviation. Any side quests that happen even are technically linear, right? Because the author is choosing to take you along that storyline. Versus a video game, you've now played Clair Obscur, you know that, and this is typical for RPGs, that there is kind of that linear path straight towards the end of the game. And at the same time, you can choose to do other things and sometimes gain a lot more knowledge. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm really frustrated by a book because a book will finish and I'm like, I need to know more. And oftentimes you don't get those answers. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one of the reasons that I prefer video games over books personally.
But I think at the end of Clair Obscur, we're still left with a lot of questions.
We are. We're so eager for whatever this company comes up with for the next game.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But I'm just saying, I don't think there was any more closure in Clair Obscur than there is in books.
It's not so much about so I get what you're saying with what I just said, mm-hmm. but it's not just about the closure for me. It's also about the journey that you take along the path of the story. Because sometimes I'll play a game very linearly and very short, right? Where I'll just blaze through the main story. Mm-hmm. And then I'll kind of decide, how much did I like this game? Maybe I'll go back and play it again, but I will intentionally hit every single side mission because I want to know more about it. Sometimes I do that on the first playthrough. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I don't ever go back and do it if the story isn't that intriguing to me, which is kind of why I like having that option of I can go back and hit all those side quests and stuff. But Knights of the Old Republic, my most favorite RPG, I've played probably 20 times. And I think that I've hit every possible scenario, light side, dark side, every individual character, the outcomes of everything, because I just I want to explore that world as much as I can. Whereas if KOTOR, Knights of the Republic, was just a book, there's no venturing out. There's no making choices. There's no alternative storylines or anything.
I mean, but why couldn't there be?
In a book?
Yeah. I mean, why couldn't there? So, for instance, this is so embarrassing. We've got the Twilight series on our bookshelves. Mm-hmm. We've got Twilight and Midnight Sun. Mm. I think technically Midnight Sun is over on our counter right now. But we've got two sides of that. Why could we not have potentially a book where you go through the same experiences, but light side and dark side, and what that would look like?
You can, and oftentimes, and if something is successful, you do, right? Mm-hmm. With like Twilight, which, I mean, granted, much later she came out with Midnight Sun, which is, hey, this is the same story. All of the same things technically happen in the same timeline, on the same linear line and everything, but here's a new perspective. I think that's really cool. You also have things like the Hunger Games series, where you get kind of those, here's the alternate, not the alternate, here's the additional pieces to that whole wide story, where you get to see President Snow's whole experience and all of that, and hopefully she continues to do more of those books. But with a video game, a lot of it, typically, if it's well written and if it's well put together, is packed into one game. Okay,
but I can read 6 or 7 or 10 books in the space of time that you're playing one video game.
That's true.
So, and I know that it's different for you because you're a slower reader. So the amount of time that you want to put in versus me, like, I understand that. I understand your perspective, but it feels like you're trying to convince me, and I'm not convinced because I can get more storylines. Like Cassandra Clare is an author. Not all of her books, The Sword Catcher.
A large swath of her books.
A large swath of her books exists within the same world and focuses on a lot of the same families, but over hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So I can go and read a ton of Cassandra Clare's books and live in the world for hours and hours and hours, but get 10 times the characters that you are getting even.
Sure. So maybe I'm just in the wrong books. I think, though, that's also, though, let's be honest, this is why your books.
It is.
And I'm video games.
It is. And it's fair. And like I said, I understand it for you. But for me, it's not going to take the place of a good book.
No. This is what happens when you have two passionate nerds passionate about different nerd things. And that's why we're here.
It's true.
Moving past that differentiator and towards more video game specific stuff, what do you feel like the difficulty curve was like throughout the game?
So I played story mode.
That's a difficulty setting for those who don't know.
Difficulty setting. Because of that, felt like largely the difficulty was not super hard. Like the first time I ran into a Bergion, say it in French.
Bourgeon?
Yeah, one of those. Hated that. The first time I ran into a mime, hated that. But I found that most of the other times that I ran into those enemies, I still hated it. It wasn't like, it was better, but I wouldn't say that it was like so significantly better. I'm also, though, a really careful player. If there's a little danger sign
in an area,
I'm like, not going there. The game is telling me I can't beat that.
The game says don't.
And I believe the game. The game knows better than me. I'm not going to go there until I've leveled up enough that danger sign goes away. So for me personally, I feel like it stayed fairly consistent, which I liked. I struggle if I'm not immediately good at something. So it felt good to be immediately good
enough, at least.
Good enough at Clair Obscur, where I could progress. I'm not a grind video gamer, especially for a story video game. Like, the grind is not the point for me. I don't care. Like, give me the fight, sure. But if I can't win it, I'm not gonna do it.
That's one way that we differ. While the grind isn't necessarily always the point for me, if there isn't a grind, I'm not super interested. I've become less interested in big Nintendo titles lately because I find that they're very easy. And even if like the story is really good or the gameplay mechanic is like really revolutionary or whatever, like those are cool and those will keep me invested to some degree, but if it can also be difficult, ooh, that's the good stuff. So I'm grateful story mode exists, not because I would ever use it personally, but because then I get to share that story with books over here. It's great.
What about for you, the difficulty curve?
I feel like it was good at being pretty consistent. I also usually avoided those danger areas. I think once I got towards higher levels, I was just like, whatever, I'm going to try it out. And sometimes it worked out. Sometimes it did not. And that was okay. That's how it's supposed to go. I'm typically the kind of gamer who's like, I'm going to try it on as hard a difficulty as I can until I'm like begging for mercy, and then maybe tone it down, because I really like to experience what I feel like the devs are trying to put together as like the full and complete version of the game. And that's like, the grind really is part of it for me. It's just not like the most important part. And I would say that like the curve was pretty good. Like I feel like the level scaling was really well done. I feel like the enemies progressively got harder and harder, and the difficulties of enemies in certain areas definitely helped ward you away from doing the wrong areas too early.
I think that's definitely fair.
Yeah.
In terms of like the scaling, I do feel like there was an expected mastery of the different characters and their skills that you had to get to. But I found that part actually fairly easy.
Really interesting.
Part of that is story mode, is that I was not worried about beating people for the most part.
But I feel like part of it is also reading comprehension. My reading comprehension, even in video games, is crap. Like, it's bad. And so like they introduce a character and they're like, hey, this is CL and 4 something and moon and sun and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just kind of like, okay, just show me. Like, none of these words mean anything to me. I need to see it. Whereas like Elizabeth would be like round 2 of like a battle with a new character, and I'd ask her how she's doing, and she would explain what's going on in the terms the game is using because she actually read it and she actually comprehended it.
Yeah.
I can't read is the problem here.
That won't stop me because I can't read.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I felt like that was very like intuitive in a lot of ways. So I really liked that felt intuitive. I do feel like though, I tended to not buy as many skills. I had more of a set skill style than you
branch
did.
out too much.
I mean, I branched out, but I don't think as much as you do.
It depended for me, depending on the character. Sometimes I really locked in.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'd lock in for a while and realize it wasn't cutting it, and then I would just totally redo everything.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Yeah. Next question for you. What character resonated most for you?
I feel like that's so hard because these are like, they're such good characters.
They're very deep.
They're so deep, and each of them has such like incredible lore that you discover along the way. I feel like this is so hard. I know that you gave me these questions beforehand and I should have come up with an answer, but I didn't because it's so hard. I think my gut reaction is both Gustav and Mael. I think Mael, I would argue that Mael is the main character of the entire game. That this game is about her.
Which is an interesting perspective because at camp, you never are Mael.
Correct. But I would argue that it's about her. And I think just the age that she is, she's a minor, she's young, she's
a
little,
teenager. Yeah.
That's such a tumultuous time, or at least it was for me. It was a very tumultuous time. And so seeing her work through grief and work through all of these like very heavy things at that age, that I was also working through heavy things, I think I really just enjoyed that. I really felt that.
And she has such an interesting approach to it too, where like, that one time Verso tries to like relate to her and she's like, just don't do that. Loved that moment, honestly, that they shared together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and she's complex and she cares about people so much. She has such a love for people.
That's why you like her so much.
That's probably what it comes down to.
That's Elizabeth in a nutshell.
And I think similarly for Gustav. Gustav is another lover. He just loves people. And I think that there is such a gentleness to Gustav.
There is.
There's a real...
I'm just thinking of that moment. Get out of my way! You could tell he was so uncomfortable about that.
Uncomfortable about
he did
yelling
not
at
want
that
to do
gestural.
that.
And then he like needed to apologize.
Yeah.
Like so.
I related to that hard.
So much. And I think his grief story as well, we watch him at the beginning when the rest of the expedition dies.
Yeah.
Considering taking his own life. And I don't know. I think that was a really powerful moment, watching Lune bring him out of that. And watching him recommit to life. I really relate to that.
Yeah. That's fair.
And so I would say Mael and Gustav, I would love just more Gustav time. I would love more Gustav time because I love Gustav. I was devastated. I considered not playing the game anymore.
Rage quitting
when Gustav died.
That's fair.
Spoilers. What about you? Who did you relate to?
For me, it was Verso. I think...
Of course.
I know, right? It's interesting because Verso has like such a complicated past in terms of the decisions that he's made and the things he considered to be right and wrong at different moments in time. If you go through kind of those old expedition logs and you see the way that he handled each of them, you can see the way that he contemplates things and the way that his morals shift a little bit and he starts to kind of understand the bigger picture of things. And I think the reason that he resonates so much with me is at the end of his time, you can really tell that he locks in and he's like, I know what I need to do. And I know that what I need to do is right. And spoilers, I know that what I need to do is completely end myself, which is like a really big deal, right? Like this is the only way in which he lives on. And he's like, it needs to be done. It needs to be over. And so it's this, and the reason is his sister, Alicia. And I'd like to believe, and I don't know, and I hope I'm never tested this way, but I would like to believe that I could be giving of myself in that way if the need really did arise, where I'd be able to see everything going on and see, I guess, with the wisdom of those however many hundreds of years or whatever the heck that he has, that what he needs to do is be done so that the rest of his family can move on, because this whole game is about grief, right? And this whole game is about how each member of that family is fighting through the grief that they have over what's happened.
Oh, there's
so much.
There's so much.
Let's skip a round. Okay. What endings did we choose?
Wait, no.
No?
Can I say something and then immediately we can get into that?
Go for it.
I don't feel like Verso sacrificed himself for Alicia. I feel like Gustav sacrificed himself for Mael.
Yeah.
I don't feel like Verso sacrificed himself for Alicia. No. To the endings. Because I feel like this
now we talk about it.
Yeah.
So if you couldn't tell, I chose the Verso ending.
And I chose the Mael ending.
Which was really interesting to me.
Why?
Honestly.
Tell me.
I think because, so at some point, you do have to choose. And it gives you all the time in the world to choose. You just sit there with that option and you just have to like grapple with the reality, basically. So it gives you the opportunity to choose. And I remember sitting there and thinking about the overall implications of both. And to me, I was like, okay, so if Alicia stays, she slowly dies. And she gets to live out like a really interesting and I think mostly positive fantasy, but where people's consent, their agency is taken away. And I was like, I don't feel great about that. I don't feel great about ending Verso either. You know, this is someone who's near and dear to the entire family. But if it's what's necessary to move on, to me, it's a part of grief, right? It's really interesting because to me, I feel like Alicia cannot accept. And that's the whole reason she does everything that she does. She refuses to accept what's happened. And she clings on to this version of Verso that's not technically real. It depends on how you look at the world that's being created and everything, you know. But I don't know. Why'd you choose your ending?
So I would argue that it's not just Verso. That she would have to give up everyone that was in that canvas. It's not just Verso.
It's a whole reality.
It's a whole reality. Those are people. Even though they were initially created by these painters and paintresses, they exist. You know, like they led lives in the same way that like Renoir inside the painting was initially created for a specific purpose. He was making his own decisions. He was painted into existence, but he took that and made it his own. Like he
even talks about how what they did pushed the very boundaries of creation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so by asking Maëlle to destroy Verso, you're asking her to destroy everyone.
A whole world.
A whole world. A whole world that she has lived now an entire lifetime with these people. So it's not just Verso.
It's not. No.
And outside of the canvas, Maëlle doesn't have a life. You can argue that she does. You can argue that she has a family. But the way that Clair treats her.
Yeah, Clair is extremely pragmatic, very do what has to be done. But according to Clair, so...
her parents are not super present.
No.
She can't speak. She is in pain. She is in constant pain since the fire. And so you are asking her to give a life up with people that she loves, who love her back, who love her so much that they're willing to die for her, to go back to a reality where she is constantly in pain, where she doesn't feel loved, where she doesn't feel protected. And we don't even know what else is going on outside of the canvas. There's an implication that there's a war going on outside of the canvas.
Some larger battle at the very least, but possibly up to a scale of a war, yeah.
So, you know, we're talking about like, oh, well, she's gonna die. Death is a part of life. She's choosing her manner of death.
She's also prolonging the consciousness of her brother who is tired.
But that's why I think that it's not Verso. It's not a selfless act to say, I'm going to give myself up so that Alicia can live on.
You think it's more because he's tired and he wants to move on himself?
He's tired. And I don't think that he fully understands the reality of what Alicia's life is without him in it.
This is so well done. because I totally I see what you're saying, and I didn't realize how passionate you were about
I'm
this.
very passionate about it.
But it does feel like so often in video games, the choice between this and that is basically it's like Star Wars light side, dark side, right? Where it's you can choose the dark side, I guess, if you're this is just fun. It's just a video game and I'm not hurting anyone in reality. But typically you look at it and most people I talk to are yeah, if I do something mean in a video game, I feel bad. I feel bad about that. But this is one of those, it's hard. It's a hard choice.
I feel like we spent the entire game trying to protect these people, trying to end the gomage.
Yeah.
And we're going to actually just not even give them their last 32 years. We're going to gomage them all at once and nothing will exist there anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're also ending Eskie. You're ending Minoko. You're ending all of this. It's not just Verso. If it was just Verso, for sure, get rid of that guy. We got rid of Gustav. Why not?
they look exactly the same.
They don't.
One is slightly more Robert Pattinson-esque and the other one is not.
But if it was just Verso, totally. But it's not just Verso.
It's also interesting, right? Because the writers of this game and the creators of this game create a world that has just a very different set of possibilities. And so one can't really easily look at this and be this is the right choice. This is the wrong choice. Again, in contrast to the typical, a Star Wars light side, dark side thing. And so it really makes you grapple with it. And it's one of the most fun things that I see online is when people fight about this and kind of they have to choose between the two. It's really interesting to me.
I really feel for Verso. I do. I don't think it justifies genocide.
And honestly, I could see the being tired argument because, he basically learns that he's dead. Mm-hmm. He's not real. He doesn't exist. Well, he's not real in terms of the technically real world. Obviously, as you've argued, there is a real world to some degree within this canvas. And so I have to imagine he's just then what is the purpose of my existence? I mean, we all ask ourselves that question, but if your perspective is such that you don't even really physically exist on any real sphere, then I have to imagine that does things to you. And that I think that's part of the reason that you see him shift so much in his moral compass and in what he thinks is right or wrong and the way that he treats different expeditions over time and everything too. It's a very complex story for sure.
For sure.
We should probably move on to other questions. We could probably talk about this.
I could talk about this forever.
It's so good, y'all. It's so good. Back to gameplay. What about this game felt accessible, and what about this game felt overwhelming? From your very interesting perspective of video games are not usually your thing.
Mm-hmm. I think most of it felt accessible. I think what got really complex for me was I could dodge fairly consistently. Parrying, I didn't even try really. And then once you added in the gray, what's that called?
Gradient attacks.
Yes. Yeah. The gradient attacks that you can only block
with a gradient parry or whatever.
That just got too many buttons for me. It was too many buttons. I could dodge and I remembered what dodge was. I couldn't remember front or back top button for parry, and I couldn't remember which one was gradient parry. And also I played largely on the Steam Deck, and it would say RL or RB. I don't know which one is RL or RB. It says R1 and R2, and maybe that would have helped if it said R1 or R2. It said RL and RB. I'm that doesn't mean anything to me.
Those are made up words.
Those are made up. And so if there was anything that was inaccessible about the game, it was that. But that wasn't the end of the world in story mode. That would have been the end of the world if I was not playing story mode. But
That's fair.
I don't think that I would ever not play story mode. So maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think everything else felt fairly straightforward. I will say, once you get Esquier and you have to fly around the map, I know in some video games you can like pick a point and it will like make a beacon or whatever so that it's easier to find when you go back from the map.
So the map is hard to traverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fairly linear when you're doing the main storyline before you get to the point where like you need to get to the monolith or whatever when you're just on the continent.
Yeah.
I feel like that's fairly linear and understandable. But once you're like trying to go to different islands and everything, and then you have to go back to Lumiere and I don't know, that I got lost. But I also am bad at maps in real life. So
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it.
yeah, I'm bad at directions, my guys.
I'm decent in maps, but even I found myself like opening the map constantly. I'd be like, wait, is it this way? Close the map. Move. Wait, this way?
What direction am I pointed?
Yeah. Where's north? It was tricky. I thought it was interesting. Accessibility wise, I will say that I learned my parry skills from a set of games called Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. And the interesting thing about those games is parrying is a big part of them, typically. And parry timing for them, if you're on like the hardest difficulty, which is Jedi Grandmaster, means that you have to hit the parry button when the enemy hits you. So that's the parry timing I'm used to. As far as I've been able to deduce for Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the parry timing for this game is you got to hit the parry button just a little before they hit you. And so that otherwise would be minor difference makes a huge difference for me. And so for the first, like, I don't know how many enemies, I was like, my controller must be broken because I know I'm hitting this, which is something she hears. I dodged that. She hears me say that all the time when I play games. And I truly felt like it. And it felt like either my controller's broken or the game is broken or my computer's broken. The second time that I'm playing on it, I'm playing PS5 and I do feel like it's a little bit more consistent, but I think I've actually finally forced myself to look at the timing and say, okay, I think you actually have to press it just before they hit you, which I guess maybe that makes more sense for a real life parry. I don't know. I'm not a sword fighter. But it is markedly different from what I personally am used to from previous games. But other than that, great game. I would say highly accessible to a typical gamer. Next question. How did you like the French inspired aesthetic?
You know that I love a French aesthetic. I, before playing this game, owned a red beret, and I owned a lot of black and white stripes. So, you know.
There you go.
But no, I thought it was really fun. Particularly, Travis and I went to France together for the first time back in May.
Of this year,
of 2025. And in September for his birthday is when I started playing Clair Obscur. And so there was something really fun about having been there. There being relative because obviously this is a fake France. But it was cool. It was cool to kind of live in that French aesthetic. And I don't know. And I love the French because you love the French.
That's fair.
And so like
it's rubbing off on you.
It is rubbing off on me. So there were just a lot of things that also because you lived in France, you speak French, came really naturally to other people that might not understand like French as much, the culture or the language. I think that maybe could be a barrier of entry. I can't say for sure because I don't have that experience, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. Yeah. What about you?
I loved it. One of the things that I thought about with this question is, so Sandfall Interactive is not the only game development studio that is based not in the US, obviously. A great deal of game studios that are based outside of the US, though, still write their stories fully within the confines of the United States of America. And I get for marketing and for reach, why that might make sense, right? There's so many of us here. The population size is obviously huge. And so we're going to be like a big part of your market. And so with all of that in mind, I love that Sandfall was like, we're so unashamed. We are unabashedly unashamed of just how French we are, you know? And granted, it wasn't like fully French. You can play it in English, and I'm sure most people have played it in English, numbers wise. But I loved all the French words that were sprinkled throughout.
A lot of French swear words, my guys.
A lot of French swear words, a lot of, but also like this, there was some of that nostalgic pull towards the Belle Époque of France, the time period in history that was just pre the World Wars, basically when they were experiencing like a lot of really good things in France. And they were experiencing just a lot of positivity right before, obviously, some of the most negative times in human existence thus far. But I really appreciated, again, that they were just like, we're French. It is what it is. So be it. Which is, for the record, very French of them to do that. And I loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had heard about it as kind of like this, like vaguely French-ish game. And then I played it and I was like, this is actually a very French-ish game in like so many ways. And I loved every bit of it.
A squeak.
A squeak? What are your thoughts on the music and the sound design?
In general, loved it. So great. I do feel like there is a battle noise that will haunt me forever.
Which one?
Just the song that plays like most battles.
Oh, okay. Bum, 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 bum. That one? No.
Maybe.
Sorry about that.
I feel like there's so many sounds going on in the music that it's really hard to replicate any of the songs with my voice, and I'm not gonna try.
Unlike me.
Unlike Travis. But there was one, and maybe it's just because I spent too much time on the continent or something, but there's one that I'm like, okay, can we be done with this particular, like there's an accordion maybe. I don't know how to describe it.
The one that plays when you fight the mime.
No, not the mime, because the mime is a specific song just for the mimes, and I didn't fight a lot of mimes.
Interesting.
Anyways, we can find it later. But in general, just the most beautiful music ever. And like, if you look at the soundtrack, there's like a million songs.
So many hours of content.
So many hours of content. So much time and effort went into these songs. And I love how many of them are in French, that they didn't compromise that in the music. And I mean, a lot of them don't have words at all. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really fun sound design. I feel like the voice actors were incredible.
Yeah, they were really good.
So good. I think fights in general felt a little bit redundant often because there's like the parry it and please survive and all of that felt, I think, a little bit redundant. But that's also because in a battle, especially because it's turn-based, I'm taking like way too long to make my decisions.
And you'll maybe always be so much more invested in the story than any interest level in the gameplay. Whereas somebody like me, I'm going to be a little bit more balanced towards the center, where like sometimes I'm almost like, get the story out of the way, I want to get back to battling. Depending on the game, I felt like this one had a really good mix of both, personally.
Yeah, that's fair. And I also, with this game, because you can get back to camp whenever you want to, I feel like you can kind of choose, not whenever you want to. After a certain point, you can go back to camp whenever you want to. So you can kind of choose when you're ready to storyline versus battle.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I loved the music in this game. I think that an incredible game cannot be incredible without incredible music.
Absolutely.
And that's true of basically any game that you look at. It's such a point of nostalgia for us as gamers. I feel like where when I think about like even Stardew Valley, incredible game, incredible soundtrack. Undertale has a similar vibe there. Hollow Knight as well. There's so many, even some games that are like my favorite games, like that have not so great music, like the music still stands out and this music still brings up like a very specific set of vibes basically for me. And I really appreciate that. I do think some of the sound design was like, I agree, a little bit repetitive. Some of the things they'd say right as you're about to be hit, like once the one team member is targeted as like the next to be attacked, like the parry it and the please survive and, you know, things like that. Those are a little bit repetitive. But I think that there's only so many of those things that you can do. But also like an advantage. Well, that'll help, you know, those kind of things that like you can only have so many things that a character says when you pick up an item, you know, which is almost why I'm like, well, maybe just don't have them talk.
That's kind of how I feel about it. Like, do they have to say something every single time?
Right. You're on an expedition. You're picking up stuff all the time. Like that's how it goes. But anyway, okay, we're going to take a snack break and we'll see you in a minute. And we're back. Next question. What was your preferred team stack?
Okay. So I tried to level up all my characters equally because I never wanted to be, I wanted to know all of the characters well. I wanted to be able to play any of the characters. I would say that I think I have some favorites.
Yeah.
But like maybe all of them. I just loved all of them. I wish that I could just play all of them all of the time because I think each of their powers is so unique.
That's fair.
Like so good and unique. I loved having Verso in. I always loved having him in because at least towards the end, after a certain point, he gets a weapon where you get an attack and a skill every time you play. And I just felt like that was incredible. I loved
super
that.
OP.
Yeah, super OP. What does that mean?
It's like super buff. Yeah, just like extremely powerful. OP is like basically godlike strength, if you will.
Okay. What does it stand for?
I don't know in that context. Usually OP in the context of like Reddit is like original poster.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a gaming specific meaning to it.
Okay. You look that up. Anyways, Verso, loved having him in there because he's great. I think
Overpowered.
That makes sense.
That does.
I was like, original poster doesn't
I understood what it meant, just not what like the underlying word was.
You understood it contextually. Fair enough. Okay. I think my favorite was Verso, Mael, and then either CL or Lune. I didn't love Minoko. Like, I loved Minoko as a character.
Yeah, but calm down.
His theme song is a banger. I get it.
Oh, whoa.
But I did not love playing Minoko often. I think his skills also felt overwhelming to me in a lot of ways.
There's a lot of them.
And I don't think that I enjoy some of his skill, like the
one you say it all the time.
Yeah. Monsieur Bank.
I love it when you speak French.
Okay. I would not call that speaking French, but whatever. That's my favorite Minoko move, like by far. Mostly because I think it's hilarious. He turns into this little guy and then bonk.
Yep.
And he can like break the enemy. I think that's so funny. But yeah, I think I kind of went between Ciel and Lune for different reasons. Ciel at a certain point is really great for getting AP for like Mael. She can farm, I guess, AP, which I really, really loved to then have Mael, because Verso's kind of creating his own AP pretty consistently since he attacks every single time. And then I got fairly good at dodging, and I'd use the Pictos and Lumina for getting AP when you dodge.
Sure.
But yeah, and then Lune I really loved because of her wildfire, that all the enemies would be burning. And then Mael could go into Virtuose Stance because of one of her skills. I don't remember.
The one where if she attacks an enemy who's burning, she goes into Virtuose.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So it was kind of dependent. I think later on in the game, as Mael's skills took more AP, I preferred Ciel, but Lune I preferred more in the beginning of the game.
So at the point where you have to like actually choose who's in your group, so I'll just keep what I'd say narrowed down. I guess you kind of did this too, to when you have those 5 options.
Mm-hmm.
I always had Mael because she's extremely powerful. I never didn't have Mael. I think once I got Minoko, I always had Minoko, mostly because of that like FOMO of missing out on feat, right? Where if you didn't get the feat, then you didn't get those skills. And it felt like I had to have all of the skills, even though I only used like maybe 20% of them total, which is still a lot of skills for the record.
It's still so many skills.
In terms of whoever was like last in that section, I did use Lune for a long time, even when I had Verso. And I think it's because I had this idea that she was doing a really good job, but I didn't really know how to manipulate her elements properly and her, like basically her skills. And I think I got like really locked into a certain set of skills that was like really not doing it for me. And so eventually, once I felt more confident in my parrying abilities, because Verso has his ranking thing. Once I felt more confident in my parrying abilities, I switched over to Verso. Still struggled a lot with Verso at the beginning until I got a couple of skills for him that I felt like were really worthwhile. And so my ending, like the party that I chose towards the end was Mael, Verso, Minoko. I really didn't play around much with Ciel at all. And so,
which is such a shame.
I know. In this second playthrough, I intend to. I want to understand her better. I'd also like to understand Lune better, but I gave Lune some time, and I really want to give Ciel some time. But it got to the point where, you know, if I was in a battle and I lost and it would ask me, do you want to send in your reserve team of Lune and Ciel? I was like, no. I don't know how to use them. I kind of lock in usually to one method of playing. It's one of my biggest downfalls as a gamer is that I don't tend to be necessarily super versatile. I kind of have one way of doing things.
Which is very much not what I want to do. I want to be able to play all of them very easily. Because at some point in the game, you're actually split up into 2 groups. And you have to battle with both of the groups. You're going back and forth between the 2 groups. And I loved it. I was like, great, I can finally use everybody. Like, not all at once, but I wasn't choosing who was in my team because it was just like wherever I was, that was my team. And I kind of loved that because I had put so much time into each of them. Like I said, even though Minoko wasn't my favorite, I used him enough to that all of them were within a level of or 2 of each other, because I want to be able to use everyone. I want to feel like I'm consistent across the board.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's something that it's one of the things that you excel at that I don't, and that I would like to be more like you.
Excel at with the like 3 games I've played.
And story mode difficulty, but still, like you take interest in that, and you it's a way of like experiencing more of the game that you do that I don't do, and I find that really fascinating.
That's fair.
So, Elizabeth, how would you live your life differently if you knew you were going to die? If you knew exactly when you were going to die, which is the case in the story of Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
I think the gommage is so interesting. It's so fascinating. Especially because, like, based on the genuine ages that are happening in the story, Travis would be gommaged.
Yeah, I'd be gone, and she would not.
He'd be gone and I would not. And I wonder, like, so realistically, there will come a point, likely, based on genetics and a bunch of different gender and factors, there will come a point in our lives where you're gone and I am not. I think the idea of that happening so soon is terrifying.
But they live their whole lives knowing when they're going to die.
Absolutely. But I don't know. Like, the fact that people were still having children, like, I don't know if I could do that. But at the same time, I understand the necessity of it, because you have to have a society and a community if you're going to eventually defeat the paintress.
And progress.
And be able to, like, give society a life.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think I would really struggle with it. But I also don't have the bravery to be an expeditioner, realistically. Like, in terms of that, I think I would be more like Sophie. I would rather go gentle into that good night than rage against the dying of the light.
Seems to be painless. So there's that aspect too.
Yeah. I do think the fact, it's wild to me that they all meet in the square and watch their loved ones disintegrate, be wiped from existence. I think if I were in the society, I would want that to be a much more closed door experience with my family. I would want that to be private. I would want those last moments to be just for us.
I'm sure some do.
I mean, theoretically, but we don't.
We don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to believe that I would make a lot out of my life, but I also, even in this life, what I want more than anything is just to have my family, to raise good kids, to be happy, to find the joy just in our little sphere. And so, you know, I don't think I have main character energy, guys. I don't know. What do you think?
Since you added this question to the list, I've been thinking about it a lot. And I think that, like, initially my first reaction was like, well, you know, I'd probably, especially like closer to the end of my life, that I'm aware of when the end of my life is, I'd probably like really shape up and like be really good about certain things. And then I thought about it again and I was like, you know, actually, I feel like I would live my life largely the same. Because realistically, we're still human.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the end of our lives as humans outside of the universe of Clair Obscur Expedition 33 could come at any moment. And despite that, we try to find that balance of self-improvement and doing better and serving others and progression and all of that stuff, and recreation, having fun, making mistakes, doing dumb things. And so I tend to believe that, like, probably there would be a little bit more shaping up as I get towards those end days and everything. But I think in general, I would still make a lot of the same mistakes realistically, because I would possibly even in some cases worse mistakes just because I'm like lashing out basically against my fate as somebody who will eventually be gommaged. Whether I would go on an expedition, I think would depend on like me as a family person, probably not. Me in that universe, it would probably depend on what my personal situation looks like. Do I have a family? Do I have close friends? Do I feel like I'd actually be of a benefit to the expedition? Because like myself right now, even if I didn't have a family, like I don't really feel like I would necessarily. I think maybe in some aspects, sure. But I'm not really much of a fighter. And so I would have a hard time believing that I could actually help. And the last thing that I would want to do is get in the way or cause an earlier demise of people because of my ineptitude. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
What do you think about the way that Lune's parents lived their lives?
Okay, remind us all how that is.
So Lune's parents, their entire existence that we understand is focused on research. It's researching the continent, it's researching the paintress, it's researching flora and fauna and just everything. Like they're very studious and they raise Lune to be exactly the same. And at a certain point, we find their expedition that died and we find the journal of one of the expeditioners who traveled with her parents. And we find out that Lune's mother, we don't know the fate of Lune's father, but Lune's mother was injured in a battle. It got infected and she died. But she said, don't even worry about it. Lune's gonna take up our mantle and she's gonna continue our work. And Lune is very distraught that even in her dying moments, her mother doesn't see her as a daughter. She sees her as a continuation of their research.
I think it's really hard, right? Because there's a lot of things at play here. As parents, you want the best for your children, and you often don't know actually what the best for your children is. And those two go together in a way where sometimes you have a very set idea for what you think is the best for your children, no matter what they think for themselves. It's hard, obviously, on Lune because she feels so unseen and she is so different from her parents. I also feel for her parents who, like, this is how they've chosen to live their lives. And they have the agency, despite all of them not being real, living in a canvas, they have the agency to choose to do that and to choose to spend their time researching. It's another approach possibly to the whole conundrum that they're in. Maybe the gommage is some effect of something going on that they scientifically can prevent somehow. And I don't know if that's their goal necessarily. I don't really remember, and I don't remember if it's even spelled out as such. It's another one of those ways where this game is so good at illustrating that people are complex and people are messy. They're so messy.
So messy.
There is not just a cute little box that we can put people in, which is part of the problem that I think that Lune has, is that she probably feels like her parents are trying to put her in a cute little box. Even though her parents wouldn't describe it as a cute little box. They would describe it as a whole world, a whole way of experiencing life.
And a legacy.
And a legacy as well. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Poor Lune. Getting towards the end of our questions, what ways did you see grief addressed?
What ways didn't I see grief addressed? I feel like from the very beginning, we see grief addressed because we're dealing with the gommage. I think it was really interesting to see Gustav, who had broken up with Sophie years before, kind of coming to the end of her life and recognizing that, like, he doesn't want to be with her in this moment. And realizing that he maybe wasted years that he could have spent with Sophie.
And thus maybe wasted his whole life in a way.
I mean, because he leaves for the expedition tomorrow.
The next day.
And so I think that's really, that's grief. that's a moment of grief, of grieving for the years that he might have had. I think we then see Gustav dealing with the grief of losing the rest of the expedition and potentially having lost Mael. And then we see Lune come into the picture, and the way that she deals with grief is so different than Gustav. Gustav is ready to give up.
When one falls, we continue. Not if, when.
Exactly.
She's so cool.
She is so cool. And I think what's beautiful is that she still feels the grief. And I think she feels it into an anger. And it's not necessarily directed at anyone, because she's not mad at Gustav, and she knows that she's not mad at Gustav really, but she needs to get Gustav a little bit angry too, because anger is an emotion. Apathy is, I think, what leads to the feelings that Gustav was feeling. And when you feel anger, when you feel spite, when you feel an intensity of emotion, it keeps you around.
Yeah.
And so Lune obviously deals with that in a really different way. I think Mael is a fascinating study in grief, because I think that there's so much of her that is subconscious, that she doesn't understand is happening, because she does feel grief, obviously. But there's a level to her that also isn't feeling the same grief that everyone's feeling in a lot of ways. Yeah. Obviously about Gustav. When Gustav dies, that is true grief for her. But I don't feel like we see her necessarily grieving the other expeditioners. And I could be wrong. I could have forgotten about that. But I don't feel like I saw her grieving the other expeditioners.
No.
And I think that part of that is her subconscious knowledge about them, because a lot of them weren't as real to her as Gustav was. I think Ciel is another fascinating one. I think Ciel buries stuff. I think
she's such a
Ciel
barrier.
just throws herself headfirst into the next thing.
Yeah.
I think that's how she ends up in the Gestrel village. She's just like, okay, onward. I guess this is my life now. I'll just fight in the Gestrel village forever. But also in her relationship with Verso, that feels like she's just not handling the grief of her husband. And she's just like, and maybe that's unfair to say. But I do think that she just throws herself headfirst. She buries it and she moves on to the next thing. And she covers it with humor. She covers it with sarcasm. She covers it with everything that she is. But I think that grief follows her closely, and she's just trying to keep it at bay by moving forward.
Yeah.
Eskie and Monoko, I think, are really interesting characters in terms of grief. Just the entire gestural way of life is so fascinating, right? Because Monoko loses Noko, but understands that he'll have Noko back, but different.
But not quite exactly the same.
Yeah. And so there's a grief, but also Noko was still so young, and he's still working through the grief of original Noko, who was his mentor.
Yeah.
Like that, I think that's a really interesting thing, and a really interesting parallel, I think, to parents. We are watching, or are going to watch, our parents decline and be themselves, but a different version of themselves, a less capable version of themselves. And
who knows us sometimes less and less as time moves on.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And I think that that is a grief that is so hard to capture. And I think they've done a really beautiful job of capturing it, where you haven't lost that person entirely, but you're losing pieces of them. and yeah, Esquier in his eternal nature, I think, I don't know. I think there's a simplicity to Esquier that I think is really beautiful, where he just takes things as is. He just loves things and is content.
Am I misremembering that Esquier was kind of like, he was a creation of like child Verso, basically?
Yes.
That is the case.
Yes.
I think a lot of it is that, right? Is that when you think about a child, when it comes to grief, there's a different ability to move on and a different tendency to hold on to what has happened. And I feel like SK is a really good manifestation of that. And it kind of like, he in a way shows the power of being childlike. Mm-hmm. Even amidst a group of adults, right? And Minoko too, I think, to some degree, but also not. I don't know. But Esquier especially, where like you get that like very different perspective, and it boils down to much simpler things for him. You know, sometimes he's woo and sometimes he's we.
And I think, you know, he shows moments of sadness. He misses Clea. He misses being able to just live life the way that they used to before all of this.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a willingness to accept whatever life throws at him, including Francois.
Yeah. I love the representation of grief also in Renoir and in the paintress. What's her name? I always forget her name.
I don't know.
You know her name if you're watching this.
You know it.
Because when you think about it, that 33 represents 67 years, or at least in canvas years, of her refusing to let go, her holding on indefinitely if she can, although we all know that she can't, to everything that Verso is and Verso was. Aline, that's right. And it's interesting seeing what then Renoir does in response to that, the way that Renoir, he also grieves, you know, and it humanizes that like otherwise big bad that is in the game. And I appreciate that they take the time to do that. I always love when games do that.
Which Renoir are we speaking of right now? Because there are two. There's Renoir and there's Connor.
That's what she calls the curator, because she could never remember the name.
Not never. I couldn't remember. We meet him once. I remember it started with a C, so I started calling him Connor.
I'm talking about like the more human-looking version of Renoir.
Okay, so the painted version of Renoir, not the curator.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, I just want to make sure we were all on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting too, because I feel like a big part of grief is making mistakes and trying to move forward, not actually knowing what the right thing is. And we see that with all of the people we've talked about, but in a way that is particularly interesting to me personally, we see that especially with Renoir. We see him shifting a lot in what he chooses to do and how he chooses to handle the situation, which is a really interesting thing to have for a big bad of a game, because he arguably, I think, is the big bad of this game in a lot of ways. Obviously, we think it's the paintress at first, and then we go to fight her, and it's the most depressing thing ever, and we realize that that's not at least necessarily exactly the case. And we see him making shifts throughout the game. And it's interesting because when you realize how powerful he is, you begin to wonder, like, why does he not just end it all immediately? You know, and then you learn a little bit more about it, how complex it is and how he loves his children and he loves his wife, and how that the depth of that love translates to the depth of the grief that he feels about everything that has happened, and about the way that not only has it affected him directly, but indirectly through the people he loves. And it's so beautiful. It's so well written.
I think it's really interesting that Renoir is Aline's version of her husband.
Yeah.
She painted him into existence.
Yeah.
Which is just really interesting because I would say that he is equal parts love and hate. I think that
She sees him true.
yeah, like she sees the love that he has for all of them.
Yeah.
And she sees the lengths that he would go to protect them, which is,
Boundless.
yeah, to the point of what she considers to be great evil.
Yeah. That is interesting. So good, y'all.
So good.
Finally, one last question.
Who would you recommend this game to?
Yeah. I mean, if incredible, like, one-player story games are not your thing, then this game won't be your thing. I would recommend this game otherwise to just about everyone. As previously discussed, there is a story mode difficulty. And so, honestly, I would even recommend this to those who have not had a lot of video game experience, because you can still experience this story through that. And I think it's very much worth it. It's going to be a lot of time, obviously, more time than your typical any other form of media, basically. But I think that it's absolutely worth it. I think that there are times in my life where I was going through a level of grief where this would have been just a whole different experience, I feel like, you know. That being said, I wouldn't say that if you are in a deeply grief-stricken point of your life, I wouldn't say that this game isn't for you. I think maybe it even could be exactly what you need. But I also think that for the rest of us who probably have been through grief-stricken moments of our life, it will be an interesting chance to look back and reflect on the grief that we have experienced, how we've dealt with that grief, how it's drawn us closer to or pushed us further away from the people around us, the mistakes that we invariably made when we were grieving, and the ways that we had to move on, because at the end of the day, you just have to move on. All this to say, it's hard. I'd recommend this game to virtually anybody. What about you?
I mean, I think the same. I think, yeah, it's just a great game. I think in terms of, I haven't played a lot of games, I have to be honest with you. But in terms of the games that I have played, I think that it's hard to beat the emotional connection that you can get out of this game versus others. There's only one other game that I would say is similar, and it's a much shorter game with a lot less. You really are the main character in this other game, but
Chris?
yeah, it's so good. Gosh. But I would agree with Travis. I think it's a game for all of us. And I think that what needs to come out of games like this is conversation. I think it is connection. I think that's the point of a game like this. I think sometimes when we have these more emotional, more intense games, it's easy to play it alone and never talk about it. And I think that does a disservice to the world, because this can crack you so open and be so vulnerable that it needs to be something that's shared, that's discussed, that becomes a part of who you are.
And with that, thank you for sharing this with us. If you're still watching, which good on you. We are long-winded. But we're grateful. Thanks for joining us. I'm Travis.
What is happening?
I was going to hold your hand.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Travis.
I'm Elizabeth.
And this has been Books and Video Bames. Remember how we hold hands sometimes?
Yeah. You held it out weird. Usually you'll just like...